Hello Internet, and today's going to be another wrap-up surrounding the NEWT readathon. As you can see, this one is for Care of Magical Creatures. I'm not going to explain this again. Go look it up. Go look at Book Gross's channel to see what the NEWT readathon was. Basically, I'm going to talk about 3 books that I read to get an O in Care of Magical Creatures. So the first book, for the Exceeds Expectations, was a book with an animal on the cover, and for this I read Dark Fang Earth Calling Volume 1. This follows a vampire who lived in the sea for a very, very long time, and when chemicals and stuff start invading the ocean and destroying stuff, she decides to get back up onto the surface, figure out what's happening, and maybe murder some people because they're destroying her ocean. So basically this whole comic is like an extreme environmentalist. So this vampire got turned into a vampire, or this woman got turned into a vampire. She decided to go live in the sea. She had a lot of great fun. Chemical oil spills like murdered everyone, but she survived because she's a vampire. She decides that the best thing to do is to get out, become a call girl, earn some money, figure out who was ruining her ocean, and murder them for doing so. So like that's basically the whole thing. I thought it was well done. I think that it was a good comic if you definitely like vampires, if you like the idea of a vampire who's also like sort of a sea vampire. You'll like this. Again, the only drawback for this was when it came to the villain for the final battle, because yes, our vampire character is doing bad things. She is very much an anti-hero, but of course there's going to be someone to stop her, and you're not quite sure they're good, even though they're trying to stop her from murdering people. So when it gets to that portion, and when it gets to the introduction of the antagonist or our protagonist, that's when the story gets a little the story and the way that the antagonist works, the way like all of that sort of comes, it didn't have enough build up to it, and then it all of a sudden happened, and then all of these things were happening at the same time, where I definitely think it would have been better if you had slowed down, taken a little bit longer to explain the other side of the equation, what the goals of the bad guys were, or just like have a little bit more imagery so we could get a little bit more used to them, and what their goals are, what they do, like how they work and stuff like that, before all of a sudden they're just like there doing some crazy wild stuff and kind of tearing apart the story. So the comic was pretty good for like the first like 4 issues that were in the volume, but when it came to the final issue and when the antagonist really had any sort of position and like interaction with the story, it started to devolve because the antagonist wasn't well developed, and so it just started feeling like things were happening for the sake of having an antagonist have something happen, rather than because it was very well thought out and plotted. Otherwise, I thought it was pretty good, and if this sounds like your sort of thing, you're probably gonna enjoy it. Maybe, like, you know. The next prompt was for Exceed Expectations. This was to read a book that had at least 160 pages. For this, I read Umbrella Academy Volume 1. This one is by Gerard Wade, which is like, okay, you did something other than sing a song, which is great, but I wish he had done better, because this was super disappointing. Like, this could have been so much better. Umbrella Academy follows like these kids who, for whatever reason, they're all virgin births. Like, just something happened, like some catalyst happened, and all these women who weren't even pregnant, who didn't even have, like, they were pregnant in no way, not at all of a sudden they got a baby coming out of them, like no pregnant, and then all on the same day, all at the same moment, all these babies be popping out these women's vaginas. Now, the scientist, like, this was a huge phenomenon. So this really rich, creepy scientist ends up gathering up as many babies that he can find, because a lot of these babies were, like, hidden away, killed and stuff, because, like, demon spawn, who else would ever come out like that? So this scientist ends up collecting a bunch, and I think there's like 8 kids that he collects, and he starts training them and stuff to be heroes. So they all live in a house that's like they refer to as Umbrella Academy, and they're all superheroes. And it starts off with all these weird kids like doing superhero things because like they can fly, or they can fight, or they have like some weird shape-shifty powers, like something like that. However, one of the kids doesn't have any powers. All she can do is play the violin really well. So all these kids then reunite. You don't even see them, like, you see them be heroes as kids once. They apparently have some torrid backstory. Then you see them as adults, and then they all get back together because the dude who raised them, their father, the scientist dude, is dead. So they all come for his funeral once they find out. At least all the ones that are still living, because apparently one of them is dead, but you never figure out what happens to them. And then at the same time, some arch villain nemesis that they had back when they were still a group is destroying things because they got back together to go to a funeral, and then all of that starts happening. And then the youngest sister, or at least the last one, because technically they're all the same exact age. Well, child number 8, she tries to go talk to her siblings, but they're like, there's this one sibling that's just like rude ass to her, and she's like, fuck you guys, I'm evil now. And so she goes to join a weird orchestra cult that like takes her body configuration and draws out the hidden powers that were within her that her scientist father didn't even want her to know about. And I'm spoiling the whole book, but I don't fucking care because this thing was fucking terrible. Anyway, let's continue. And then she turns into like this violin person. So she's like a living, like she looks like a living violin. She's on the cover, and if she plays the violin, like she can make you do stuff and make you feel like her music just controls your mind and like makes you do stuff. So like the way that she plays, she can destroy things and stuff like that. And of course, like there was this other brother that came back and was like, the apocalypse happened in like 2 days, and it turns out like she committed the apocalypse, and now they have to stop her before she like goes through with the apocalypse and stuff. And basically it was a huge mess. It was a huge ass mess. First off, all these kids have at least 6 names. First, they have their names of the numbers that they were for which number baby was collected. Then they have the names that they were given by the science dude or the science dude's robot wife thing. And then they have the names that they took upon themselves because they didn't want those colonist names. I don't know. They have other names. And then they wouldn't consistently call each other one name or another, so you kind of had to figure out which name belonged to where. You, of course, never figure out what happened to one of the siblings. You, of course, never figure out, like, the history of why that one brother was so mean to that girl when she came for the father's funeral, because like she only sees one of the kids, right, one of the other dudes, and then he's like really mean to her, and then she runs away, and then she becomes evil. But like you kind of get the hint that like maybe they had a thing, because like technically none of them are related, so maybe they had a thing or something, or maybe like she left because she didn't feel like she was respected a lot. And then like apparently the scientist knew that she was like the strongest, but he always like kind of pushed her off because he didn't want to awaken her powers. Anyway, like the whole thing was really a mess, and it was such a shame because the villain of the story seemed really great, like her powers and like the whole thing, it seemed really great. It was just horrible writing, horrible execution. It was bad all around. Would not recommend. Definitely not. It was a mess. I hated it. So Gerard Way, you should probably stick to music. Like, stop writing comics. You're bad at it. And then the last prompt was for the O's, and this was a book that had dragons included. And for this, I read Slothbog's Gold, which is the first book in the Adventurers Wanted series. So this, of course, starts off Alex on his quest. It is about a young kid. He's 16. He starts walking down the road. He sees a sign in a shop. He goes inside. The dude's like, hey, you're an adventurer now. And then he goes on a quest to defeat a dragon. And it's really fun. It's really easy. It's a high fantasy that is made really, really simple and really, really enjoyable. It in no way like talks down to the reader, but it's definitely very, very easy to read. Very, very nice to read. It's a calming read. You just like read it and you're like sort of calm. You just enjoy yourself because it's a good time. So it's the first book in the series. I really liked it. Like, I love those adventurer bags, and I wish I could have one. So like the adventurers basically have this bag that is magical. It's like a satchel, a side satchel, and it's like expandable on the inside, except you can enter into it, and like when you go inside, like it can be set up like a whole fucking house in there, like treasure rooms, apothecaries, iron forges, 5 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1 kitchen, a library. Like, you can, like, if you got enough gold coins, you could have a whole house in your bag, and then it can carry everything, and it is always guaranteed to be lightweight no matter what's in it. And I really want one, and I'm super jealous of adventurers. So if that's one magical item I could have, that would definitely be it. I would just live in my adventurer bag, like, duh. So I want you guys to comment down below, what is the worst comic book or book, if you don't read comics, that you have ever read? Like, one that had like such good potential but was just such garbage when you read it, and you were just like, how could somebody have such great ideas and garbage fire them? Like, how could you garbage fire these great ideas? So tell me down below. If you like what you're seeing here, you want to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.